Good evening, good people, and welcome to tonight's Working Families Party Mass Call. I'm Ashley Woodard Henderson, your host for the evening, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that I am moved beyond measure every single time that we all choose to come together again. Thank you all for not regarding it robbery to be here. This is a perfect moment for you to invite a friend or kin to come and join us tonight. Hit the group chats, post on all your socials. Make sure to tag Working Families Party and me if you so choose. We want the world to know you're here. We hope that the Working Families Party will be your home for how working families can be even stronger together as we head into the 2026 elections. And y'all know how we do. Drop as we get started your name, where you're calling in from. You can rep an organization if you so choose, and one thing that is giving you hope in this time of darkness. And if you've already introduced yourself, some of y'all been hanging out with us in the waiting area in the chat for 30 minutes. So if you've already introduced yourself, feel free to still drop that one thing that is giving you hope in this time of darkness. One thing before we get into it, our environment right now, especially online, is full of disinformation and bots. So I want to be clear about what's welcome here. What's welcome here in this sacred space that we're building together is working people with diverse sets of opinions and experiences. So let's engage each other by witnessing one another's personal experiences, even when they differ. What won't be tolerated here is hate and lies. So if you see any hateful messages, I want you to flood the chat with solidarity and other messages of love and positivity. Let's stay focused, keep our eye on the prize of the meaningful work that we're doing here together. And like we always do on these mass calls, we're going to take just a moment in the rush, the hustle, the noise of this moment to get grounded. So I invite you to sit back, to lay down, to feel your body supported by your chair or your couch or your bed or the ground beneath you. If it's safe to do so, you can close your eyes, or as my sweetheart says, just lower your gaze. Take your eyes off the screen for just a minute. If it's safe for you to do so, take your eyes off the screen. And then I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Let's do it one more time. Take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Let your shoulders drop. Just take a moment to acknowledge that we all come to this call from different experiences. For some of us, we can't figure out why things feel so weird and scary right now. Everything that we thought we knew about this country has been thrown into turmoil. This sense of unrest motivates you to seek what the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. referred to as beloved community, a community that's rooted in justice, unconditional love, and nonviolence, a community where poverty and hunger and prejudice are replaced by kinship and interdependence. Others of you are coming to this call because what's happening on the streets and in the halls of power feels all too familiar. Maybe you fled from a country where armed gangs, in many cases supported by the US government, roam the streets, abducting and killing people, where the government existed to serve only the needs of the elite, where paramilitary forces were killing people that looked or loved like you with impunity. Others of you may be coming to this call with an ancestral memory that, as the Nigerian author Chinwe Achebe said, things fall apart. You feel in your bones and everyday existence the history of your body, of your ancestors' bodies, of your elders' bodies being captured and commodified, with dreams deferred and communities destroyed by forces beyond your control. Wherever you're coming from, however you're showing up to this call tonight, I want you to know with everything in me that you are welcome to this beloved community, my friend. We all deserve safety. We all deserve to live with freedom from fear. We all deserve to be able to speak our minds and protest our government without being afraid that we could be the next to be executed in the street for doing so. We all deserve the freedom to worship who we want and practice the religion of our ancestors or no religion at all. We all deserve freedom from grinding poverty or the fear of ending up without a place to live or a place to go when we get sick. And we deserve the freedom from endless toil just to make someone else rich. Friends, whatever comes and wherever we come from, however you are arriving to this call, we are in this together. The enemies of our beloved community, and make no mistake, we do have enemies, will try to tear us apart. They are, in fact, trying to do so already. They will try to pit race against race. They will try to pit immigrant against native born. We know they will try to do this because they've always tried to do this for as long as this United States of America has existed, and even before that. So we're not coming to this call naive about what we're up against. We're also aware of the power we have to stand together against it. So as we prepare to enter into tonight's call, I want you to just take a moment to see all the folks in the chat. Take a moment to breathe in that power, feel it in your body, the power of coming together across difference to make a difference together. Differences that will make all of our lives, everybody, especially those of us that are suffering the most, better. I want you to breathe in that power. And I want you to breathe out all that is weighing you down tonight. For a moment, I want you to breathe in what solidarity feels like in practice. And I want you to breathe out all of the skepticism and pessimism that would keep us from building and actualizing and practicing that beloved community here tonight, like lives depend on it. My friends, let's take that moment. Let's take a snapshot in our bodies of what that feels like, and let's get into it. First, I'm not going to hide the ball tonight. I want to share with you what we're asking all of you to do. So I want to be clear that our pressure on ICE and the White House is working. But this is not a time where slowing down is something that we can afford. There's a lot competing for attention right now, and the White House is depending on our resolve to dissolve. They are counting on us to get distracted, to get tired, to move on. But we are solid as a rock in our demand. Not one more dollar, not one more cent to ICE. Y'all may have seen the news today that ICE is supposedly ending their surge in Minneapolis, and time will tell how real that is. While it's clear they are feeling the pressure and the heat of public opinion, we cannot take for granted the evil that they are willing to exacerbate all over our community. So, earlier today, Senate Democrats, except for John Fetterman, voted down the Republican proposed continuing resolution to defund DHS, the Department of Homeland Security. Now we have to keep the pressure up to make sure that Democrats don't agree to any funding for ICE and CBP until the Trump administration takes these forces out of our communities. So, what do you want me to do, Ash? I'm glad you asked. I am asking, WFP is asking that we call all of our senators and demand the resolve of not another dollar. I need you to commit tonight with us to call every single day and keep calling, collectively calling, until we meet again on the 23rd. So here's where you start. Get your phone out, open your text messages, and I want you to text the words ICE out, ICE space OUT, to the number 30403. Text ICE out to 30403. That will send you a suggested script, but give it your heart. Say what you feel. Tell them what you mean. Then, when you text ICE out to 30403, you're going to get connected directly with your senator. And here's the kicker. Because you texted, we're going to remind you regularly to keep up the calls. Because let's be real, we're all busy. We've got 1,000 things pulling for our attention. But this terror is at the top of all of our minds, and we need to make sure that it stays at the top of the minds of our senators every single day of this month. So again, text ICE out to 30403. Share it with everyone you know, because we have to be the loudest voices and we have to be unwavering and clear. If you agree and you're down, I need you to put not another dollar in the chat. Let me see you. Let me see you put it in the chat. Not another dollar. I see you saying you're committed. Shout out to you. Make sure the people know that this time we are going to stand up. We're going to be loud. We're going to continue to make sure that the senators are feeling our pressure. Not another dollar to ICE and CBP on our watch. And as always on these calls, my friends, we want to ground ourselves in strategy, which is why we always take some time, just a few minutes, for political education. So let's get into that. Let's name the elephant in the room, my friends. We are in a moment of extreme crises, intersecting crises. We're seeing the true face of the authoritarian regime come out in places like Minneapolis, Memphis, Portland, New Orleans, the threats in Maine, the threats in Springfield. Like, all of you all are probably living in a place where you feel like the regime has its boot on your neck. We're also seeing the power of brave, disciplined, and nonviolent resistance in the streets. People who study this stuff will tell us that when authoritarian government seize control, like this administration has, they have about 18 months to consolidate their power. We're now 12 months into this government, and the resistance in the streets, combined with the executions of 2 civilians in broad daylight, at least the ones that we know of, have catalyzed a movement that is causing those in power to backtrack in real, intangible ways. And it's breaking through to the broader public. Even voters who are tuned out or who feel stuck in the middle are clocking this stuff and they don't like it. We have a real opportunity to draw a connection between the millions of dollars spent on ICE as a paramilitary force roaming our streets with the fact that people are losing their health care. We have the chance to make the connection between people being abducted by the government and the sense that we all have that we should feel safe in our communities. We can make these connections real, and the organizing that people are doing on the ground, everyday people like you and me, is leading the way. But I also want to take a step back a bit from this immediate fight so that we can see it from a wider view. Because if you're just tuning in, it would be really easy to think that what is going on in Minneapolis is just an anomaly. It might be easy for some politicians to try to feed us a throwaway line like, this is not who we are in America. But the real deal is the crisis runs much deeper than that. The slide right here that you can see is a picture of the political crisis in America. And at WFP, we understand it like this. Authoritarians have taken over the Republican Party, carte blanche. The Democrats are largely under the control of corporate power. Well, what does that mean for working class people across race and region? It means tons of us are leaving the Democratic Party. But at the same time, we're still stuck in this two-party system that makes it hard to imagine that there's much of an alternative. This political crisis is nested inside of an even larger crisis. It's a crisis where the economy is undergoing severe disruptions. Institutions of all kinds are breaking down and being viewed as illegitimate by large majorities of people. It's a crisis where the very social order is breaking apart and where down starts to feel like up and up starts to feel like down. Here is somebody who knew a bit about moments of crisis, like the one that we're experiencing right now. This is Antonio Gramsci. He was a leader in the Italian Communist Party back in the 1920s. It was a time of great optimism. Workers and factories were taking over their plants, and labor militancy in Italy was peaking. But just a few short years later, Gramsci was thrown in prison by the Italian government, and the labor movement there was defeated. It was the kind of moment where the old order was breaking down and something new had not yet been built to take its place. It was a time of great danger. As Gramsci said, it was a time of monsters. Now, shout out to Steve Hughes for our pop culture moment. I don't believe everything I read on the internet, and you shouldn't either, but some people out there are saying that Bad Bunny is a reincarnation of Antonio Gramsci because he's giving voice to people, to the people, and making meaning in this time of chaos through the power of his reggaeton music. Shout out to Benito and Benito Bowl. If you know, you know. I'll let you all be the judge of that, my friends. But let's get back to Antonio Gramsci. So Antonio gets arrested in 1926 by the guy there in the middle, Benito Mussolini. Gramsci spent most of the rest of his life in prison as fascism grew more and more powerful across Europe. Most people know about Italy and Germany, but throughout the 1930s and into World War II, there were fascist governments or puppet governments in Spain and Portugal, Greece, Austria, Hungary, Slovakia, Croatia, and Norway. And it wasn't just a European thing. This is a 1939 picture of Madison Square Garden at a pro-America rally organized by the German-American Bund. The German-American Bund was a pro-Hitler organization, and this event that you can see here brought 20,000 of their supporters, their American supporters, their US-based supporters together. It included all the trappings you might have found at a Nazi rally in Germany: swastikas, men in brown shirt uniforms, and of course, one very large cutout of George Washington at the front of the room. But as Gramsci described, the 1930s was a time when the old order was dying and the new one had not yet been born. So there was also a lot of other things going on. We're going to talk about them really quickly. One of the most important was the founding in 1935 of the Congress of Industrial Organizations, which you all probably know today as the CIO in the acronym AFL-CIO. The CIO was a breakthrough for building working class power in this country. They organized entire factories, not just certain skilled workers in those factories. Almost by definition, this meant that they organized across the color line. They built cross-racial unions at a scale that had not been seen before, and their militant tactics put the bosses on the back foot. They were famously known for the sit-down strikes, which occupied the auto plants around Detroit and which led to the formation of the mighty United Auto Workers. It was also a period of innovative electoral organizing. Before the 1930s, the political machines had tried to control election outcomes by limiting turnout. Sound familiar? But this was an era when it suddenly became important to get as many people, as many of our neighbors, as many as our folks to the polls as possible. Efforts to organize new voters took center stage. In this photo, you see the American Labor Party organizing voters in New York in both English and Yiddish, teaching people how to vote and building neighborhood level electoral power block by block. And we should note that the American Labor Party is in many ways a predecessor of the Working Families Party, which also was founded in New York some 62 years later. The ALP organized a political voice for unions and working people and grew to be one of the most powerful forces in New York politics at that time. There was also organizing within government to build power. One important example of this is represented in this photo. The woman on the left shaking hands is Mary McLeod Bethune. Miss Bethune was born to formerly enslaved parents. She grew up to become the first Black woman to head a federal agency. She was a key convener of a group of other Black leaders inside the federal government, informally known as the Black Cabinet. This group of leaders met weekly to plan ways to influence the Roosevelt administration, and they had a particularly strategic relationship with Eleanor Roosevelt, who you can see in this picture as well. So, Ashley, why go through all this history? Again, I'm glad you asked. I get that there are struggles of the present that feel so incredibly urgent. Why look backward? Well, the reason for us is that it's important to take a look back because it can be easy to get caught up in reacting to the thing that's right in front of us. This is why we put this quote from Stuart Hall up for you to see. He was an incredibly influential thinker and had a lot to say about the practice of politics. So let's not get it twisted. Politics is something bigger than just elections. Politics is a set of things that we do, which includes elections, that helps us construct majorities. Let me break that down a little bit. This is what most people think when they hear the word politics. They think there's a red team and a blue team. They think these are the only teams, and this is the way that things have always have been. But we're trying to shake up this map. We're trying to build a new center of gravity that brings in working class people across race and region. We're trying to shift the balance of power and the sense of what is politically possible. But how do we actually do that? What are the ingredients that get into it? Well, one of them is that we need to be doing cross-racial and militant organizing, just like the Congress of Industrial Organizations was doing back in the 1930s. Another ingredient is reaching far reaching creative electoral organizing, just like the American Labor Party was doing. And another is organizing for power within the government, just like the Black Cabinet was doing. All these pieces together, these ingredients, help us change the debate and shift the political terrain. They help us draw in working class people who may feel like politics is just not for them, or feel like politicians are just liars, or feel like the two major parties are just trash. They help us speak to your cousin and my cousin, to the people we know from church, mosque, synagogue, or the club, to the people we work with. They help us speak to all of those people individually and at scale to construct a new political majority. So yes, we are in a moment of great crisis. And yes, we need to react quickly to block the consolidation of authoritarian power in this country. And we need to bring to this work the view of the long-term power that we need to build together. So if you've been missing the block and build framework, this is exactly that. All right, y'all, we just walked through the big picture, the crisis, who the monsters are, and how we are going to build to beat it. And the fact is that moments like this are not new. Authoritarians consolidate power when people disengage. That's their playbook. They are not innovative, but we are not disengaging. We talked about constructing a new majority, and this right now is a part of it. Because blocking funding for a paramilitary force that's roaming our streets is not a side issue. This isn't just for those other people to focus on. This is central to whether working people feel safe and are able to organize. So we're not separating the long-term strategy from the immediate fight. They are intimately connected. That's why we're asking you again to make a commitment tonight. I want you to commit to calling your senator every single day, starting tonight, and demand that they stick with us on not another dollar, not one more dollar, not one more cent of our taxpayer dollars to ICE, not one more dollar, not one more cent to expanding terror. So I'm reminding you to take your phone out right now and start a new text message. Send the words ICE out to the number 30403. If you're like, Ash, I already did it, send it to somebody. Send it to 3 more people and ask them to join you in your pledge to make this commitment. Put it in the chat that you're committed to making that call. Do it again and again every day until the 23rd of this month and beyond, frankly, if we have to. We are in month 12 of this government and they are trying to consolidate power. We are consolidating people and turning that into sustained pressure. So again, text ICE out to 30403 and demand with us in one loud voice, not another dollar. Y'all, there's a lot going on right now with the fight in Congress over a partial government shutdown and the fight to win changes with ICE and the Department of Homeland Security. Here to give us the current state of play is somebody that y'all know well, the leader of my party, Maurice Mitchell, the national director of the Working Families Party. And brother, Maurice, welcome.
Ash, thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you for taking us to school. I really appreciated that grounding. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to be with you and everybody else today. And there's a lot to talk about. You know, there's so much going on. One thing that I notice as this administration loses or feels like it's losing its grip on power, something I want everybody to notice is that whenever we make an advance, they become more desperate. They become more profane. They act out. Yesterday, I don't know how many people saw Pam Bondi and that testimony that she gave in Congress, but it was desperate. It was unhinged. It was profane, even. It was, in some ways, a laughable display of public leadership, but that is the energy of authoritarianism. She was speaking to an audience of one. She wanted to make sure that her president knew that she had fealty to him and not the American people. I say this to say we need to notice, we need to clock our advances and our wins. And so, family, although there are dark times and there are dark times ahead of us, and this authoritarian regime has not yet folded, we have victories. We make advances. Last Thursday, one of our own, Ana Lilia Mejia, the former New Jersey state director of Working Families Party, the former co-executive director of Popular Democracy, a former labor organizer at SEIU, won a highly contested congressional primary in New Jersey. Now, the forces of machine politics, they lined up all against her, but Ana Lilia won. Now, she won because she was crystal clear about her principles and her values. She won because she will fight for changes that working people need. Her neighbors want fighters, and she is that fighter. She won because she will never be beholden to corporate interests. She won because she was unequivocally calling for ICE to get out of our communities. Now, despite millions in dark money being poured into this race from AIPAC and their billionaire friends, and despite the forces of machine politics lined up against her, Ana Lilia won. It is hard to overstate what an impressive historic feat Ana Lilia and our movement pulled off in New Jersey 11 in 10 weeks. I want us to process the fact that that is an indicator that everyday people around this country are resonating to the hymn of freedom in all different places, cities, suburban areas like where Ana Lilia was able to win in her district, in rural country, in every region of the country. Even on election day, establishment Democrats rushed to call the race for Ana Lilia to congratulate another candidate. I don't like this is how historic this was. But Ana Lilia was not done. WFP was not done. And today, we're one big step closer to sending another champion to Congress to defend our people. We will keep rewriting what is politically possible together, one election at a time. Don't let them tell you what is politically possible. What is politically possible is what we are willing to organize into possibility. So today, the Trump administration announced plans to scale down immigration enforcement in Minneapolis. I don't know if you heard. Now, we're going to keep all eyes on Minneapolis until we actually see ICE and DHS leave. And we will carry the lessons from the fight for Minneapolis as we prepare to defend the next communities targeted by this illegal campaign of terror. Now, as others will talk to you about tonight, this drawdown of ICE officers is the direct result of the heroic resistance of Minneapolis residents, everyday people in Minneapolis. Don't let them tell you anything different. Ordinary people have shown extraordinary bravery defending their communities. Now, we hope the people of Minneapolis can start to heal from the months long siege of their city, the murder of their neighbors, and the tragedy of families ripped apart by the Trump administration. But this announcement is also, in some ways, an attempt to distract us from another victory for our movement, the growing resistance inside of Congress to increased funding for DHS and the violence and cruelty perpetrated by ICE and CPD. So we want to shout out all of the people in Minneapolis that helped make today possible. We're going to be vigilant to make sure that they remove their full presence from Minneapolis, and we're going to keep our eyes on the prize because we need ICE out of every community, and we need to make sure not one damn dime is spent on ICE and CBP. So today, Senate Democrats collectively use their power to vote down a continuing resolution to continue funding ICE and CPB. They have pledged not to allow even one more dollar of funding for these agencies until Republicans meet their demands for accountability. This is tremendous. Every single Democrat in the Senate, except Senator Fetterman. And I know the Pennsylvania WFP got some words for him and got a petition of people who are willing to back his opponent whenever that person surfaces. But that's another story. Our activism, it's clear, is working. I want to remind folks that a few weeks ago, before the murder of Alex Preddy in Minneapolis, 7 House Democrats voted with Republicans to support this DHS funding bill. That was just a few weeks ago. There were a lot of jellyfish Democrats that were unwilling to do what was so apparent just a few weeks ago. But look at where we are now. Look at what our organizing has done. Just a few weeks ago, Democrats gave Republicans the votes to pass the bill in the House. But over the past few weeks, the anger and frustration from the grassroots, our people power, the power that they say doesn't matter, the power that they say could always be ignored, our power and strategic organizing from our movements against ICE and CPB has changed things. We change the climate, the politicians go out and respond to the weather. So here's the deal as of tomorrow. The Department of Homeland Security will officially be in a shutdown, but ICE and CPB still have tons of money. Do you remember that thing called the One Big Beautiful Bill that was passed this summer? That bill has mega funded ICE and CPB. So even with the shutdown, they're going to have a lot of money to play with in order to continue to operate in all of the horrible ways that they've been operating. So we need to keep advocating to all Democrats that they should not agree to any more funding for ICE and CPB until Trump removes them from all of our communities. Full stop. That's why I'm asking you to keep the pressure on. All gas, no brakes. We have to move from strength to strength. Our losses have shown us what's at stake, but our victories show us every day what is possible. We will not rest until the new world that we all believe is possible, that is so close, is here. ICE out. Good night.
Y'all heard our party leader. Y'all better show that man some love. If you are down, I need you to say I'm all in for not another dollar. Let us know you're committed. You heard him. While Congress debates and votes on pushing more money towards ICE, we're advancing a slate of candidates for Congress who are crystal clear about the future that we stand for. They're accountable to us. That's a future where government serves working people, a future where public dollars fund healthcare, housing, and schools, not terror, and a future free from abduction squads roaming our neighborhoods. Tonight, we need you to take a step that keeps us moving on our mission to block and build. We need to block any more money to ICE and the consolidation of authoritarian power. We are building a party that is calling for what working people need now, advancing candidates and winning the power that we have to get the things that we have always deserved. So join us in action this week and next. Text ICE out to 30403. Not another dollar, not one more cent. And stay with us as we organize and run the campaigns to elect the working family slate to Congress in districts across the country. Y'all, I am so proud to bring our next speaker up. This is a Working Families Party Wolfpack leader who's been building and organizing with WFP for more than a year in Minneapolis. If you're a regular participant in the mass calls, you probably know what I mean when I say Wolfpack, but just in case you're new, welcome. Let me explain. Wolfpacks are groups of WFP members who organize with their neighbors and their friends and their families, taking action locally and adding to the activist power of our national actions. They first launched out of our past mass calls, and now they're active in states across the United States. They are building the party. They are growing local leadership, and they are expanding what's possible when we recognize the potential for us to be a party of members as organizers. Wolfpacks are doing it right. They are killing the game with discipline, rigor, and joy. Y'all show some love. I am so excited to introduce Luca Marks, Minnesota Wolfpack Partnerships Captain. Luca, I will toss it to you next.
Thank you so much, Ashley. That was a marvelous introduction. I could not have asked for better. As Ashley just told you all, my name is Luca Marks. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a partnerships captain with the Minnesota Wolfpack. I'm calling in tonight on the ground in Minneapolis, where, like we've heard many times tonight, we're living through an ongoing occupation by ICE and CBP agents. Today, the federal government announced a permanent drawdown of ICE activity out of our city, and that is hopefully fantastic news. But I also want to be clear that that comes about a week after an announcement that they would be drawing down 700 agents out of the city. But we're not buying it, unfortunately. The agents aren't here, but that promised drawdown remains to be seen. Data gathered by local networks of legal observers show that abduction attempts and threats against legal observers have continued at a steady pace since the January 23rd Day of Truth and Freedom mass mobilization. Meanwhile, thousands have been sheltering in place for months, making the impossible choice of protecting their safety instead of earning a living. The widespread loss of wages is fomenting a growing eviction crisis borne by our most vulnerable working class families. And as we've seen nationwide, our elected Democratic executives are failing to act in this moment. And while that's true, I also want to be clear that our WFP champions from Minnesota are showing up as the leaders that we need. In Congress, our longtime WFP champion, Rep. Ilhan Omar, continues to lead the growing call to abolish ICE. Recently, at a town hall here in the district, she was assaulted by a stranger, and she survived that assault. But she didn't just survive it. She stood up and then she squared up, ready to throw a punch of her own, making it clear that she's willing to fight for herself, for Minnesota, and for all of us. Exactly the leader that we need in Congress right now. And on the local level in Minneapolis, WFP champions Council President Elliot Payne and Council Member Oreen Chowdhury, along with our allied council members in the Twin Cities DSA, are leading in the streets and in their seats, documenting ICE's crimes, defending our neighbors, and passing a unanimous resolution calling on Governor Walz to enact an emergency eviction moratorium, and separately dedicating $1 million in city funds to emergency rental assistance for families impacted by this crisis. Meanwhile, another WFP-endorsed champion, Senator Omar Fateh, is using his re-election campaign platform to support community-led aid fundraisers and his position in the state Senate to push for action at the state level. At the same time, tens of thousands of our community members here in Minneapolis, next door in St. Paul, across the metro and across the state, including many of our Wolfpack members, are responding to this moment by organizing decentralized networks of mutual aid and rapid response to do what they can, from documenting ICE activity to driving neighbors to work, and even raising money for strangers' rent and groceries. I cannot overstate how inspiring it is to be organizing on the ground in this moment and to see the tremendous scale of the community response here. And while we're involved in our community's response, I also want to be clear that in true WFP fashion, our PAC as a whole remains focused on winning governing power for working people. Last week, our statewide Democratic caucuses took place, and something really miraculous happened. Those caucuses experienced the largest turnout that they've seen since the first Obama campaign in 2008. That turnout showed clear, widespread energy for progressive candidates and against ICE. But that's not all. About 70% of those caucus goers were first-time caucus goers. Those are folks completely new to this process because they are feeling the pressure and the demands of this moment and are rising to meet them. We are working to leverage that moment, this moment, to tremendous progressive energy and what feels like an unprecedented unification of public opinion here in the cities to establish our WFP Wolfpack as a decisive electoral force in Minnesota. We're expanding our leadership team and launching new dedicated teams of activists with individual focus areas like recruiting new activists, hosting engaging events for our members, and conducting electoral research, in addition to building our capacity for voter contact. The structure is allowing us to bring in scores of new activists at all levels of organizing experience to play to their strengths, deepen their interests, while building a new power center for working families in the Midwest. Like you said earlier, Ash, this is the time of monsters, right? And it is our job to help the new world struggle to be born. In order to do that, we need WFP champions in every level of government nationwide. And I am amped, thrilled, and honored to be doing our part here in Minnesota. Thank you so much for having me. I will hand it right back to you, Ash.
Luca, we love you. We're sending love. I saw folks doing the Wolfpack howl in the chat. Shout out to everybody that's repping a Wolfpack that's on the call tonight, and shout out to all of the folks in Minnesota that are making the impossible possible on a daily basis for all of us. Luca, we are so grateful for your leadership. Y'all, next up, I'm honored to introduce someone who is not just my leader, but my friend, my sister, my comrade, Guerline Jozef. Guerline is a fierce advocate for Black immigrants and Haitian communities and the co-founder and executive director of the the life-saving organization, the Haitian Bridge Alliance. If you're not following them, if you haven't checked them out, tonight is your night. Guerline's been on the front lines challenging anti-Blackness in our immigration system and fighting for dignity, safety, and real belonging for our people for decades. She leads with clarity, with courage, and with deep love. And let me tell you, I don't know many people that tell the truth when it's uncomfortable in the way that Guerline does. Y'all show some WFP love to Guerline Jozef. Guerline, I'll toss it to you.
Thank you so much, beloved. Thank you, Ash. Thank you, Mo. Lucas, thank you, everyone, for holding on and pushing through. We've heard all of those things, and really, ICE out is the reality. ICE kidnapping our people while they are doing laundry, while they are going to school, while they are dropping their pregnant wives to give birth at the hospital. They are being kidnapped from left to right, from Minnesota to San Diego.
Y'all be patient. I think we're having some technical difficulties. Guerline, we got you.
My bad.
You're back.
We see white supremacist ideology at the middle of everything we are seeing right now. And when we say not one penny to ICE, not one more penny to DHS and CBP, we are saying not one penny of our tax money. I want to make it clear that the dollars that are paying for the killing in the streets of Minnesota, for the kidnappings in the street of San Diego, it is our tax-paying money. And what's being happening right now is happening in our names. And that is the reality. That's why it is so important for us to come together to say not one more dollar. Not in our name, not in our pockets, not in the streets that we must make sure are being protected. We at the Haitian Bridge Alliance, we stand on the intersection of Blackness, human rights, social justice, human dignity. Why? Because we clearly understand that our history, our present, and our future are interconnected. I am a proud daughter of Haiti, and you know we fight. And you know we win. And no matter what happens, no matter what they do, our very existence is an act of resistance. So that is why, as we continue to bring the labor movement together, we bring the racial justice movement together, we center that in humanity, in dignity, in love. And we continue to make sure that when we say ice out, and as my beautiful child will say, melt ice, when she was just 4 years old, not understanding why are we in the streets fighting for the lives of people. If it is ice, why can't we just melt it? Why can't ice be just out of our communities? Why do we have communities of pregnant women and children whose fathers have been taken, kidnapped, while they are following the rules of law? While they are being called for an ICE check-in, never to be returned home. While they are going to court hearings, never to be returned home. Why? And I think that as we continue to move forward in 2026, there must be a change. This cannot become the norm where people in power are running around doing whatever they want, whenever they want to, and then look in our faces and lie, telling us what we just saw in those videos are not true. This is the time to come together, especially as we are centering the anti-Black racism that is at the middle of everything this country stands for. And I know so many Black folks are tired. Yes, I am exhausted. Unfortunately, I cannot remove my immigration from my Blackness. I cannot remove it from my womanhood, from my motherhood, from all of those things that we together have to acknowledge. And yes, we celebrate our ancestors, both those who were enslaved in the United States and those who were also enslaved throughout the Americas, because we must understand we were separated, we were divided, sold to different masters and plantations. Doesn't mean we are no longer related. It simply means in 2026, it is a call for family reunification. It is a call for all people to come together to push back against what we are seeing happening in the United States and around the world. So when we say ICE out, we say ICE out of our pockets, ICE out of our schools, of our streets, of our hospitals, our families, and really want to make sure that we stand on that. And Ashley, I'm going to stop here, but please give the people the number they need to dial, the number they need to text ICE out, and make sure they continue to do that until the 23rd, but really until ICE is melted, until ICE is out of every corner of the United States.
Yeah, it won't be over until we say it's over. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your leadership, Guerline. We love you. And we're sending love to the Haitian Bridge Alliance family. Y'all, last but certainly not least, I get to introduce you to one of my labor heroes, our brother, Greg Nomaker. If you haven't met Greg, he is the president of SEIU Local 26 in Minnesota, where he's been on the front lines organizing janitors and airport workers who are facing not just wage theft and general exploitation, but also now facing down ICE intimidation for daring to speak up in the first place. When a worker in Ramsey County went public about mass wage theft and was later detained, Greg called it what it was, an attack meant to chill organizing for all workers. Under Greg's leadership, Local 26 has marched at the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport to demand an end to deportation flights and to say clearly when one group of workers is terrorized, it drives standards down for everybody. Greg is here tonight to talk about what it means to fight ICE's presence in our workplaces and why we're demanding not another dollar for a system that divides workers and punishes people for organizing. Y'all give some WFP love to my brother, my hero, Greg Nomaker.
Hey, Ashley. Hey, sisters and brothers. So excited to be a part of this discussion with as many fighters as are on this call. So, at Local 26, we represent about 8,000 janitors, security officers, property service workers in the Twin Cities. The vast majority are immigrant, primarily East African and from Latin America. And so the impact of ICE on our membership directly has been more than 25 abductions. And it has just, 10% of our members have been just staying at home in the last month and a half, too terrified to go to work, having nothing to do with their status, but just because we know driving while black and brown in our city has been something that can get you killed. So within that, we also are standing in this moment of grief and sadness and seeing our families and our brothers and sisters torn away from us. At the same time as that, this is also a moment of some hope, because the resistance of people, everyday people, our own union members in the street over the last 2 months, but in particular on the day of no work, no shop, and no school on the 23rd of January, really gave, I think, many people an incredible sense of hope that we can turn this violence and hate against those who are bringing it to our communities and make it work against them. So on that day, I'm sure many of you saw some of the details, but over 100,000 people marched in the street on a day that started out negative 50 degrees below zero wind chill. It was a warm negative 20 degrees wind chill by the time we had the march. It was a day where over 1,000 small businesses closed. It was a day that we filled up in order to get warm. We filled up the Timberwolves basketball stadium, the Target Center, took it back over for the people. Whole school districts closed down. 2 whole buildings of AT&T with CWA workers closed down. So, I mean, it was just really an amazing day where, in addition to the huge marches that now in the Twin Cities we have done many of, as I know many of us around the country have, that are necessary. It's nothing against the marches. The marches are critical and a great first step for folks. But people were clear we needed to do a level of disruption, an economic shutdown of our city for a day, to really start to register the kind of impact that we needed to start to break the ice. Now, we got a lot of work to melt the ice totally, but anybody in Minnesota knows you got to put down the salt a little bit or some other sand, and you got to whack at it with a shovel for a while and to start to break it up. And I think that breaking started to begin on that day of the 23rd. So within the union movement, we have a lot of work to do. And I know many of the folks on this call, Working Families Party is very close to many of our union brothers and sisters. And so, one step that was so important is to begin with education, to take seriously that it is our job as unions to help be at the center of these kind of community calls for a day of no work, no shop, and no school. Even though we know most of the labor law in our country has been set up for the last 100 years to try and prevent that from happening. So it takes creativity, it takes some risk. So for us, it began with education internally. Some of the incredible trainings freedom trainers have done. There's many versions out there, nonviolent direct action. We did a version of our own in October with about 300 top leaders from our union and from some of the closest community allies, going through a discussion about what is the stages towards authoritarianism and what has been effective, whether it's in South Korea or Guatemala or South Africa, been effective in fighting against it. And then to do assessments and to really test our steward structure in our work sites. What are demands that we can do on the employers? In our case, it was a demand for a legal defense fund and a demand for, what many are calling now a Fourth Amendment demand around not letting ICE onto the property. So those were demands that workers moved in the work site when they, frankly, as immigrants, were not very comfortable doing large marches out in public. But there was, this is not a service. You don't receive liberation, you have to fight for it. And so folks in their work sites organize their co-workers, move those positions and make demands on the employers. So those were little assessments. Those were skill and structure tests, measuring our strength before the call came from the community to actually call for this day of no work. Another piece that was, I think, very important was around how we had to be open to unusual allies. Small subgroup of the interests of those who are members. And it's so critical for unions to really be social movement unions and to help lead a broader bloc. But we know often they don't do that. We know some of the community organizations sometimes can be stuck in battles over funding and resources and access and within communities, and can sometimes be less effective than we need them to be. We know church leaders can sometimes speak a good game from the pulpit, but not be able to lead in actually moving congregants and their peers into battle. And we know that mutual aid groups can be incredibly powerful. They were in the Twin Cities playing such an important role, but sometimes have a hard time moving into a more offensive stance to be able to lead fights that actually bring the pressure to those who are bringing the problem to our communities. So while those critiques are all true, or have some truths, it is also important that in this moment that we see each organization as what it potentially brings. And the day of no shop and no work just would not have been possible. I mean, literally 300,000 people ended up not going to work that day. It would not have been possible if all of those different groups didn't see each other's strengths and come together based on those strengths, not just based on the weaknesses that they all also do need to work on. And so, how did we get that to happen? Some of that was based in the Twin Cities. There is a long tradition of, a pretty good alignment and a set of working together. But even that alone was not enough. There had to be a separate, not just one big tent, but a separate strategy within each of those sectors, within churches, thinking about pastors speaking to pastors about being ready to do civil disobedience at the airport. Over 100 did that day. Within unions, thinking about within each CBA and legal parameters, what did it look like to not go to work that day? Within renters, the renters organization here decided that they were going to start to move towards doing an actual renters strike. So each organization within their own sector started to think about what does maximum disruption look like, not in La La Land, not as if we were in Argentina or France where they're pretty used to doing this, but in our real context, what does it look like to push the envelope and get to as much disruption as we could? Now, this was not a general strike. Some people have called it that. We will take much more building to get to that point, but it was a first step down the path of intentional economic disruption at in this case, whole city level. So we are very proud of that experiment. There are many lessons, many failures, and many little successes that we made along that way. And we hope that across the country, folks use the opportunities when Trump and his goons come to your town to do the experiment in your situation as far as you can. Many of us are looking at May Day. We think that is an awesome opportunity for many of us to test our muscle at the same time. But whatever it is, this is a time to take some risks. It's a time to have unusual coalitional allies and to really push ourselves to bring as much disruption as we can. Because without it, we're just not going to win. When we get to these upcoming elections and this authoritarian administration just decides they don't care what we vote for, we have got to be ready to defend our democracy. And that is going to be in part at the polling stations, but that is also going to be in part in large mass demonstrations. And that is also going to be in part with us being able to actually disrupt the economy. So I look forward to this discussion and learning from each other going forward.
Y'all show some love to Greg Nomaker and the mighty House of Labor represented by SEIU tonight. I know we got some SEIU folks on the call this evening. I saw y'all in the chat. So love to y'all. Thank you for being here. For all of my homies that have been hitting me up being like, when's the general strike? What's up with the general strike? When we going to do the general strike? Y'all just heard from Greg. We are meeting people where they are. We are playing to our strengths. We are not leaving them where we found them. We are testing to see where our weaknesses are so that we can build up a mighty blow. So by the time it's go time on a general strike across this country, we have organized to sustain that thing. Do y'all know that the Montgomery bus boycott was over 365 days? It was like 380 something days. I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to live that. Like if we've got to actually fight that fight, I'm trying to be prepared to do it. And Greg is teaching us the way. Thank you for being here with us tonight amidst all the other commitments that folks are asking of you. We're so grateful for your leadership and your courage and your steady leadership of our communities for years and years and years. We're grateful for you, Greg. All right, y'all. We have come to the end of yet another powerful evening together. I want you to show some love in the chat for every single one of our speakers, to our party leader, Maurice Mitchell, to Luca and the whole Minnesota Wolfpack crew, to Guerline Jozef and the Haitian Bridge Alliance fam, and to Greg and all of our fam from SEIU and Minneapolis and Minnesota and across the United States. Thank you. And I'd be remiss, as always, if I didn't thank each and every single one of you who attended for not regarding it robbery to build beloved community with us tonight. Y'all, I know I say this on a lot of the calls, but it feels critical to remind you again that no one else is coming to save us but us. I saw some of the chat and how hard it can be when you feel constantly at the end of brutality, not only from the state, but sometimes from our neighbors, right? I get it. but it's us that's going to save us. Being in beloved community is not just a value that I have, it's a practice that I'm in. Loving each other is a doing thing. Solidarity is a doing thing. This is how it has always been. Winning is going to require us to be disciplined and strategic in our collective action. We've got to make some commitments to take. It could be our neighbors and community members. It could be a total stranger, but it would be wrong, whoever it was. So I need you to make the commitment. I'm making the commitment. And I am blessed beyond measure to be taking these steps, these calls to action with each and every single one of you. As new developments unfold, we'll be reaching back out with more opportunities like this to gather. I already told you we're coming back together on the 23rd. If you want to make sure you get the bat signal when it's time to gather again, be sure that you've texted mass call to 30403. Again, to get the bat signal when it's time to gather again, text mass call to 30403 and we'll make sure you get the notification. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you again to all of our speakers. Thanks to ACT TV and Free Speech TV and all the WFP staff who make this call possible. To Steve Hughes for helping get this script together. We love y'all, and we will see you next time. Good night.